Hello everyone, welcome to Indian Economy by Aman Soni. In today's news hour, we will be discussing the important economy articles from the Hindu newspaper. In page 1 itself, there is news about the Household Consumer Expenditure Survey. So what is this survey all about? Why should we do it? Let's go through the details. The All India Household Consumer Expenditure Survey is conducted every 5 years by the National Statistical Office. So the time interval is every 5 years. The previous survey was conducted during the 2011, but even the new survey which came at 2017-18, the results of it were not accepted by the Statistics Ministry. So now they are planning to conduct a new survey. So why is that important we regularly conduct a survey? As we have just discussed, since 2011-12, we have not conducted any survey, and all the official household estimates of the consumer spending we have is almost 10 years old. So when we are basing our policy decisions on factors, that is the data, which is 10 years old, the decisions might not be correct, because the data you are basing for all your policy decisions is almost 10 years old, and in these 10 years the consumption pattern of the people, the income levels of the people would have changed, because of which the taste and preference of people would have changed. So all these factors would have impact, and there will be an impact of rural urban migration, and now the recent impact of the pandemic. So because of which, if you can think, so much can change in the consumer way of spending in the last 10 years, and all this should be properly reflected in the data that we have, and the data that we have is almost 10 years old. So now, even though the government is mandated to conduct the survey every 5 years, the previous survey which was conducted in 2017-18, because of various reasons, the results were not accepted. We'll look into it. What will the survey help us in? We know the poverty lines are based on the consumption levels of rural areas and urban areas, and the data for that is collected through this particular survey. So one, it will help us in fixing the poverty lines, the estimates of the poverty lines, and the second factor being the GDP calculations, because one of the factors out of the many factors considered in the GDP calculations are the consumption expenditure and the base for the GDP calculations. So if the factors that are collected during the last 10 years change, so the way of calculation methodology of the GDP, the base of the GDP would also get changed to reflect the more recent figures. And the third the prime factor being the consumption patterns across the country. As we know, even the RBI uses the CPI index, which is basically the retail price index, and the retail price index is directly dependent on the type of the consumption pattern, because what the people are buying and purchasing, that is directly reflected on the consumer price index. So the monetary policy is also based on the consumption and expenditure. So you can think how important the consumption expenditure data will be crucial for the economic policy decision making. But what was the problem with the previous survey that we got in 2017 and 2018? The ministry said that the data had quality issues, so they did not accept the survey. And that particular survey, when all other factors were showing the increase in the consumption expenditure, the survey which was sampled, it showed decrease in the consumption expenditure, which would directly have an impact on the increase in the poverty. So the ministry said that there is some quality issue in this survey that we have collected, and now we have to do a proper research. We have to change the methodology in which we collect the survey. So they have rejected the 2017 and 18 survey numbers. The estimates of the household monthly per capita consumption expenditure and the distribution of households and the persons over different monthly per capita expenditure classes, and other aspects like the consumption expenditure in rural areas, what is the consumption expenditure in urban areas, what are the spending patterns in each state and union territories, what are the spending pattern in all the different socio-economic groups will be known from this particular survey. So when they collect from the sample space all over India, when they collect from the rural areas and urban areas from the different class of people, so we can see what is the spending in particular state compared to the other state, what is the spending of a particular vulnerable group compared to the rich class, how much is the divergence. All this could be the end results from the survey that is collected. Now we just discussed the 2017 survey was rejected because it was having quality issues. The reason being it showed the decline in the spending when all other factors were showing the increase in the manufacturing and spending. Now because of the quality issues, now the people conducting the survey, they are being given special training how to sensitively collect the data, and the survey instruments are also being refined. The survey instruments have also been refined to collect the consumption expenditure on the health and education data properly, because in the earlier survey the consumption expenditure on health and education was not properly documented. Now the methodologies have been refined to capture even the health and education data. So here the basic facts that you have to remember for prelims is that it is released by the NSO and at an interval of 5 years, and the broad understanding of why the consumption expenditure is survey data is important, because it helps in fixing the poverty lines, to understand the consumption patterns in the economy based on which the government would make its policy decisions, and it would also help in rebasing the GDP calculation. In the editorial page, we discussed about the upcoming FTA between India and UK and the visit of PM of UK to India. So both the countries committed for more cooperation on trade, defense, in fighting the climate change, and in the aspect of cyber security. Both the countries decided that by the end of this October end, during the Diwali, we would finalize the free trade agreement with UK. Currently, recently we signed an agreement with UAE and Australia. One of the factors between India and Australia trade was the reduction of tariff in the Australian wise by the Indian government. So UK also has the similar concerns. It wants the Indian government to lift the high tariff that it has imposed on the Scottish whiskey, because that would be a high sale article for the UK. And similarly, to reciprocate that, UK is giving more flexible rules on visas to the Indian professionals. So any foreign trade agreement has to be give and take, because if the agreement is favoring a one party too much, the agreement won't move forward. So there always has to be a fair give and take. And both the nations also discussed about how to strengthen the defense ties and the cooperation in strategically important Indo-Pacific region. They also discussed about how to invest on the green technologies and international climate finance. And the remaining part of the article is not important from the economy point of view, so we can skip it. Here we just need to know that we are in talks to finalize the free trade agreement with UK, and by the end of this year we are going to have FTA, and when the FTA releases, we'll look into the various provisions and how it would impact the Indian economy and the UK economy. That's about this article. Today in the Moneywise page, we need not read these articles, we can skip them, and there is no business separate news today in the paper. Those are all the news related to economy today. Thank you so much.